There comes a point when life starts to feel mechanical. Wake, work, repeat, like an endless loop that slowly eats at the edges of purpose. Everything looks fine on the surface, yet something underneath begins to whisper that this version of existence is too small. That whisper is not restlessness. It's the signal that evolution has begun. The system built for survival no longer satisfies the hunger for expansion. The universe does not level you up through comfort. It levels you up through pressure. The weight pressing down is not punishment. It's a test to see whether you are ready to step into a higher frequency of living. When everything feels confined, that's your spirit trying to outgrow the shell it once called home. Growth never arrives with warning. It begins with discomfort. Subtle at first, then unbearable. The old patterns start to suffocate. The conversations that once entertained now drain. The environments that used to feel familiar now feel foreign. This dissonance is evolution pulling you forward while your old self resists. The pull is not against you, it's for you. Reality begins to shift the moment you stop negotiating with mediocrity. Every time the higher self calls and the lower self argues, a war ignites. The winner of that war decides the direction of your entire life. Those who delay action live in repetition. Those who embrace change step into reinvention. To reach a higher level, detachment becomes mandatory. The old identity cannot cross the threshold into a new existence. That version of self was built for survival, not expansion. The moment one begins to evolve, people start to fall away, not because of betrayal, but because they belong to the level being left behind. Attachment to familiarity is the anchor that stops most from rising. The leap is never about distance. It's about release. The next version of life requires a lighter load. Those who carry approval, fear, and comfort into evolution sink under the weight of them. The ones who ascend travel alone at first. There is always a breaking point before breakthrough. The mind rebels when change becomes unavoidable. It searches for distractions to silence the unease. But the discomfort remains because transformation is not something you control. It's something you allow. Resistance makes the process painful. Surrender makes it powerful. To level up, one must surrender to uncertainty and still move forward with precision. Every unknown step is a test of trust. Fear becomes fuel when interpreted correctly. Every leap into the unknown trains the nervous system to adapt, and every adaptation expands awareness. The more uncertainty you embrace, the more reality begins to unfold in your favor. Reality is not something discovered, it is something constructed. The same environment can be heaven or hell, depending on the perception carried into it. Once the mind realizes it is the architect, not the victim, the world bends differently. The walls that seemed immovable begin to shift. The opportunities that appeared random start aligning. The higher version of self does not chase outcomes, it creates them. The energy once wasted on control is redirected into creation. Reality responds not to words but to vibration, and vibration rises when alignment replaces confusion. Every thought becomes a blueprint. Every action becomes architecture. Evolution demands solitude. The process of recalibration cannot occur in noise. Isolation is where the mind reorganizes itself around higher order thinking. The solitude that feels like exile is actually incubation. It's the universe stripping away distractions so that clarity can sharpen. In that silence, ideas emerge that could never survive in the chaos of constant motion. The identity built for the next level of life forms here, in the quiet, in the boredom, in the unglamorous discipline of reflection. Every empire begins in isolation before it echoes through the world. The absence of applause is not absence of progress. It's evidence that the foundation is still being poured. Discipline becomes the bridge between intention and transformation. Motivation fades, but ritual sustains. The next version of self cannot be built through occasional effort. It must be constructed through daily repetition. Every consistent act rewires the brain, reshaping not only thought but reality itself. Routine creates rhythm, and rhythm creates momentum. The process may appear slow, but compounding is invisible until it becomes undeniable. The small, consistent actions performed today are conversations with the future self. Every disciplined moment says, "I am ready for more." That readiness is what opens the next level of experience. Once awareness expands, the world stops being a place to survive and becomes a field to master. The same challenges that once caused collapse now become creative opportunities. You stop reacting to life and start directing it. That shift is subtle but seismic. It is the difference between being ruled by circumstances and ruling them. Control over self grants control over environment. The more one refines awareness, the more external conditions begin to reflect internal mastery. The life that once felt random begins to feel orchestrated. Synchronicities increase. Momentum compounds. Reality starts responding to precision like iron drawn to magnetism. Every version of evolution requires death, not the physical kind, but the psychological one, the letting go of habits, thoughts, and identities that no longer serve purpose. The ego resists because it fears erasure, but what dies is not the self, it's the limitation. The pain felt during this shedding is the signal that expansion is working. Every ending is a disguised beginning. The version of life that once felt distant is already forming. It just demands space. The mind must empty before it can receive. That is why breakdown often comes before breakthrough. The universe clears what cannot survive in higher frequencies. Every story of transformation begins with confusion. The mind spins in circles, trying to solve the same problem with the same logic that created it. Patterns repeat, outcomes echo, and frustration becomes familiar. Then one day, a crack appears in the illusion, a single moment where truth slips through. The realization doesn't shout. It lands quietly, almost gently, but its effect is seismic. Everything that once felt external suddenly feels internal. The weight shifts from circumstance to control. The world no longer looks like something happening to life, but something responding to it. In that instant, the game changes. Reality bends differently when perception stops being reaction and becomes direction. Before awareness, the world feels like chaos. Life appears as an unpredictable storm where decisions barely ripple the surface. But after realization, every movement gains meaning. The storm doesn't disappear. It reorganizes. What once felt like random suffering begins to reveal symmetry. Every setback transforms into strategy. Every failure unfolds like coded instruction. The moment awareness settles, life stops being survival and turns into creation. The difference is microscopic yet monumental. A single shift in consciousness that redefines what power actually means. Nothing outside needs to change for everything inside to realign. The external is simply the shadow of the internal, and once that is understood, the game can finally be played with intention. The old self resists the awakening. It prefers the comfort of confusion. Blame feels safer than responsibility. Yet once the realization embeds itself, ignorance no longer satisfies. The mind begins to see the architecture behind experience. Every thought, every emotion, every decision now connects to consequence. It becomes impossible to live unconsciously again. That's why enlightenment often feels like grief at first. The death of delusion is painful. But freedom always demands loss. The loss of excuses, the loss of blind comfort, the loss of the belief that fate dictates everything. Once control is recognized, fear shifts direction. No longer a fear of the unknown, but a fear of remaining unchanged. Reality bends differently for those who awaken to their influence. The same morning routine now holds potential energy. The same conversation becomes an exchange of vibration, not words. The same failure that once felt devastating becomes data. Awareness injects intelligence into every moment. It sharpens perception until even silence speaks. The game of life stops being random trial and becomes deliberate refinement. The one who sees through illusion no longer fights the current. They redirect it. Progress no longer feels forced, it becomes flow. The power was never in force, it was always in focus. The realization alters time itself. Before it, days vanish in repetition. After it, moments stretch wider, each second packed with awareness. Attention becomes currency. Every task, no matter how small, transforms into an act of creation. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Writing one line becomes legacy. The world does not slow down. Consciousness speeds up. Opportunities appear that were always there but previously invisible. Clarity makes the ordinary extraordinary. The mind learns to move with precision rather than panic. The realization becomes the dividing line between drifting through life and designing it. Those who awaken start to notice the patterns of their past. Every event, no matter how painful, fits into a blueprint too detailed to be random. The betrayals, the heartbreaks, the losses, all sculpted resilience. Each experience was not happening against life but for evolution. The recognition of that truth dissolves bitterness and replaces it with gratitude. The awareness that nothing was wasted redefines how progress is measured. The realization doesn't erase pain, it assigns it purpose. The past becomes a teacher, not a trap. The game changes when experience becomes education instead of evidence of failure. Once the inner lens sharpens, identity shifts. The question is no longer, what am I getting from this? But who am I becoming through this? Growth stops revolving around goals and starts revolving around mastery. The pursuit of pleasure fades and is replaced by the pursuit of power. The power of inner calm, of focused energy, of deliberate direction. The old metrics of success crumble. No longer measured in possessions or praise, progress is now measured in peace and precision. The game changes not because the world adjusts, but because the definition of winning evolves. Awareness births accountability. The realization that life mirrors the internal state forces a new level of responsibility. No one to blame, no one to rescue, no one to fix it but the self. That truth carries weight, yet it also carries liberation. The realization reveals that every obstacle is optional, every limitation self-imposed. From that moment forward, excuses lose power. The focus turns inward. The work becomes psychological, emotional, spiritual. Mastering the inner kingdom becomes the only strategy worth pursuing. The outer world, once chaotic, begins to fall into place effortlessly because the ruler within has stabilized. The process of awakening never ends. Each realization births another level of understanding. Every layer of awareness peels away another illusion. The world keeps expanding in proportion to consciousness. Life stops being a ladder and becomes a spiral, endless, fluid, alive. What once seemed impossible becomes inevitable, not through luck but through alignment. The realization transforms not only perception but physics itself. Energy flows differently through a mind that no longer resists its own power. The game keeps evolving because awareness keeps deepening.